Okay, we're live.
Okay. I want to welcome everyone to the special city council meeting on Wednesday, August 26th. We do have our agenda before us. I want to welcome the public and as well as all of you. This is our last meeting of special council meetings. The regularly scheduled council meetings will resume on Wednesday, September 16th. And we will be meeting every first and third Wednesday starting September 16th. We will notify the public whether those meetings will be in the same format in Zoom or if we will resume in person. That's not been discussed yet, but something we need to talk about as council. Mr. Ray, do you have your agenda?
I do, Mr. President.
Let's go through communications. Item number 1.
Receive and file.
2.
Receive and file.
3.
Receive and file.
4.
Receive and file.
5.
Receive and file.
6.
Receive and file.
7.
Receive and file.
8.
Receive and file.
9.
Receive and file.
10.
Receive and file.
11.
Receive and file.
12.
Receive and file.
13.
Receive and file.
14.
Receive and file.
15.
Roll call vote.
16.
Receive and file.
All right, there are no public comments at this time. Under ordinances, item number 1.
Consent.
2.
Move to CPED committee.
All right, 3.
Suspended consent.
4.
Suspended consent.
5.
Suspended consent.
6.
Suspended consent.
7.
7. We have a request for a separate vote.
Okay. 8.
Suspended consent.
9.
Suspended consent.
10.
Suspended consent.
11.
Suspended consent.
12.
Suspended consent.
13.
Suspended consent.
14.
Suspended consent.
15.
Suspended consent.
16.
Suspended consent.
17.
Suspended consent.
18.
Suspended consent.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to request a separate vote on 18.
Okay. Mike, you, Bosch.
Noted.
Oh, no,
Mr.
Bosch has,
And I'm sorry I didn't make it known in advance, but I would like to co-sponsor number 18.
okay. Mike, you have that for a separate vote.
Yes, we're going to do 18 as a separate vote, and Councilman Adamczak would like to co-sponsor. Do we have anyone else that would like to co-sponsor that legislation?
Mr. President?
Councilwoman Davis.
President?
Yes.
Yes, would you please put me down as a co-sponsor of that piece of legislation?
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
can I add my
McNabb.
name to the list as well?
Okay. So all right, no problem.
And,
Councilman Ray.
You can put me down as well.
All right, clerk, you have that. All right. Under signed out of committee, ordinance 20-101.
I guess we'll do suspend and consent on that.
All right, let's go back through from the beginning. One more time, under communications, item number 1,
Receive and file.
2,
Receive and file.
3,
Receive and file.
4,
Receive and file.
5,
Receive and file.
6,
Receive and file.
7,
Receive and file.
8,
Receive and file.
9,
Receive and file.
10,
Receive and file.
11,
Receive and file.
12,
Receive and file.
13,
Receive and file.
14,
Receive and file.
15,
Roll call vote.
16.
Receive and file.
There are no public comments at this time. Under ordinances, number 1.
Suspend.
Mr. President? President,
Councilwoman Davis.
Yes, under number 12 to Councilman Ray, is that going to INS and planning? I mean, investigation?
Under communications, number 12.
Yes,
No, it's received and filed.
it's received and filed.
It's just,
It's a new liquor control, so it should be INS and
oh,
planning.
okay. All right, we'll update that then.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so under communications, number 12 is INS and planning, correct, Councilman Ray?
Yes.
Yes, it is a new, it's a notice for a new, so yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Councilwoman Davis. Under ordinances, number 1, Councilman Ray.
Suspend and consent,
Number 2,
CPED committee,
3,
suspend and consent,
4,
suspend and consent,
5,
suspend and consent,
6,
suspend and consent,
7,
separate vote,
8,
suspend and consent,
9,
suspend and consent,
10,
suspend and consent,
11,
suspend and consent,
12,
suspend and consent,
13,
suspend and consent,
14,
suspend and consent,
15,
suspend and consent,
16,
suspend and consent,
17,
suspend and consent,
18,
separate vote.
and signed out of committee ordinance 20-101.
Suspend and consent.
You all ready to go directly into the meeting?
Looks like everyone's in agreement. Yes, Mr. President.
Yep. All right. Gavel has been struck. This meeting on Wednesday, August 26, 2020 has now been called to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Adamzat,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Hughes,
Here.
McNally,
Here.
Oliver,
Here.
Ray,
Here.
Turner,
Here.
Kitchen.
Here. Councilman Ray, under communications and reports, item number 1.
Mr. President, under communication and reports, I move that items 1 through 14 and 16 be received and filed in INS and planning.
Second.
The motion carries. Under communications, this is a roll call vote is necessary. Is there a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation to approve? Councilman Ray?
Mr. President, I make a motion that we accept the planning commission's recommendation for item number 15 and have a roll call vote.
Second.
Second. Clerk, call the roll.
Adamzat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas to accept the BZA's recommendation for approval.
Thank you very much. Under ordinances, item number 1,
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to approve the purchase of a 2016 Caterpillar Model 926M.
Councilman Ray.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place ordinance items 1 through 6, 8 through 17.
Councilman Ray.
Yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Number 2 is not going to be lumped in with that.
Okay. President, I motion that we suspend the rules of council and place ordinance items 1, 3 through 6, 8 through 17, and ordinance 20-101 before council for passage pursuant to the consent agenda.
second,
Second. Roll call on the suspension.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner. Council President
Yes.
Turner, 7
Yes.
yeas for the suspension.
The rules of council have been suspended. Are there any further remarks? Roll call on the passage.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the passage.
Ordinances number 1, 3 through 6, 8 through 17, and ordinance 20101 have all been passed. Under ordinances, item number 2,
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to enter into a professional services agreement between the City of Youngstown and Youngstown State University's Department of Geography and Urban Regional Studies.
Councilman Ray. You're on mute, Councilman Ray.
Mr. President, I move to move this item number 2 to the CPED committee.
second,
Ordinance number 2 has been moved to the CPED committee. Under ordinances number 7,
Authorizing the Board of Control of the City of Youngstown to waive former bidding pursuant to section 735.051 of the Ohio Revised Code in order to approve a purchase order for the amount not to exceed $48,000 for the emergency demolition of 15 Oak Hill.
Councilman Ray.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place item number 7 before council for passage.
second,
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
Turner.
No.
6 yeas, 1 nay for the suspension.
Rules of council have been suspended. Are there any other remarks? Roll call on the passage.
Adamsat,
No.
Davis,
No.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
No.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
No.
3 yeas, 4 nays.
Ordinance number 7 has been defeated with a 4-3 vote. Under ordinances, item number 18.
Providing that an amendment to the charter of the city of Youngstown shall be submitted to the electors of the city of Youngstown for adoption or rejection at the general election to be held November 3rd, 2020, pursuant to section 120 of the charter of the city of Youngstown and Article 23, sections 8 and 9 of the Constitution of the state of Ohio, to amend section 18 salaries of the charter of the city of Youngstown as herein described. Such ordinance shall be passed prior to the beginning of the term of the mayor to be effected. The salary for the finance director and the law director shall be set by ordinance of city council.
Councilman Ray.
Mr. President, I move to suspend the rules of council and place item 18 before council for passage.
second,
Roll call on the suspension.
Adamsat,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
McNally,
yes,
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
7 yeas for the suspension.
The rules of council have been suspended. Are there any other remarks? Roll call on the passage.
I'm sorry,
Adam?
Mr. President, I do have a remark.
Councilwoman Turner, I'm sorry, you were on my first screen. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No problem. In my opinion, the legislation at this time is flawed for 3 reasons. First, the packet was presented, explained, and laid out by the person that stands to directly benefit from the change being made. And although there is no section in the charter that defines the word term, throughout the charter, the word refers to the mayor's term of office, and the finance director and law director are directly tethered to that position as they are appointed. Thus, I feel that my interpretation is reasonable and it's sound. Lastly, and most importantly, I think the request kind of came on the heels of a poor financial outlook due to the effects of COVID-19. So with that being said, I agree that people should be paid on their merit and ways should be comparable to their talent. But this is not the time, nor do I feel this is the process that we should be taking to make this change to the charter. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other remarks? Roll, Councilwoman McNally.
I just think it's very important that we clarify the fact that this charter amendment change has $0 figure tied to it. It does not increase or decrease anybody's salary. I just want to make sure that that is very, very clear.
Councilman Oliver.
I just want to say I do agree with both of my colleagues at this point, but I also think that we can go ahead and allow the people of the city to decide this for themselves. That's it.
Councilwoman Davis.
Yes. As Councilwoman McNally said, this does not set a dollar amount. What it does is to allow council, if it were to pass by the citizens' vote, it would then allow council to determine the salaries of the law director and the finance director, whether it goes up or down. But in the end, what this does, it does put it into the hands of the voters, whether or not we as council would be responsible for setting those 2 individuals' salary, and then we as council bear that responsibility in totality. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ray.
Yeah, I would just say it's also, you could note too that, I mean, we do have, some uncertain times financially ahead of us, but this also allows us flexibility if there had to be cut somewhere else. Now that is not a fixed dollar amount. So if we did have to do a cut across the board, we could actually adjust those salaries down if we had such dire circumstances that was necessary.
All right, roll call on the passage. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Hughes, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. As being the only, department head that actually went through a salary adjustment through the hands of council. You know, I went for one of the highest paid salaries of the city down to one of the lowest paid employees of the city while being a cabinet. I think there's no guarantee that, I think there's no doubt in my mind that I was paid much less than my value. And it wasn't right and wasn't fair, but it happened. And it is true that when this vote took place, there are members on council here and now that also voted for that. Put that aside though, if we value these employees and we don't want to get into politics about reducing salaries, and you can't say it won't happen because it happened to me. And not that my salary was dictated anything other than that, but I think a better approach should be made. And I think that the salaries shouldn't be left to the hands of council because as it's been in my experience, it wasn't dealt fairly in the past. I think more of an appropriate thing would to increase the salary if that's the direction we want to go with if it's by the percentage, instead of the 20%, maybe 90% or 95, whatever the difference is, or to get the same salary as the mayor. I really don't care, but if you're thinking about doing something the right way, leaving in hand to politicians, I think it seems to be a little less than guaranteed. That's my 2 cents about leaving it up for chance. I think having it down to an exact salary seems to be more appropriate than what we're doing. Even by the comments that has been made, we're going to try to have the possibility of lowering the salary dire straight. Why would we want to lower the salary of the law director and the finance director? We just had a corrupt finance director and it was all about money, 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 money. So now that shouldn't even be a possibility. So that's my 2 cents. I believe that the appropriate thing here, if it's the value that we're trying to guarantee and pay the service, then that should be locked into the code, what we're doing here today. That's it for me.
Thank you, Councilman Hughes. Roll call on the passage.
I have my hand up, Mr. President.
Who was that? Councilwoman Davis? Yes.
Yes, Mr. President. And I would need an explanation from the law director or Mr. Vivo. I believe that as this is written, it would sever the tie-in of the law director salary and the finance director salary with the mayor, because as it's currently written, any increase to either of these individuals' salaries would increase the mayor's salary as well if we didn't sever those those positions. Or do I have that wrong, Mr. Vivo?
Mr. Vivo, you want to respond?
Good evening. Thank you. Let me say this. I do think you have it incorrect, Councilwoman. The mayor's salary, the way it's currently established, is set by ordinance. The the law director and the finance director are then salaries are currently established at 80% thereof. The proposed change would not affect the mayor's salary or the way the mayor's salary is established. It would simply allow council to establish by ordinance the law directors and the finance director's salary. Does that answer your question?
What she's asking is, did that answer your question, Councilwoman Davis?
No, I don't think so, because I was asking if we don't separate these things, if we attempted to give the finance director a pay increase automatically, that would thereby increase the mayor's salary in the same proportion by 20%, because there has to be that, as it's written now, it would have to, any increase to the law director or the finance director automatically increases a third party. As it's written now.
Yes, you are. I'm sorry. Yes, you are. I mean, I think you are correct that if you, under the current language, if you wanted to raise the salary of the finance director and the law director, I guess it would be both because they're both set at 80%, then you would have to do so by increasing the mayor's salary.
And as if we change it, it could be through the chair. It could be, we could vote upon a law director, or a finance director, but not necessarily do anything with, it's not requiring us to do anything with both. There's no requirement that we act upon both. I just want to make sure I got it right in my head. Okay, thank you.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you.
Mr. Vivo, could you speak to that whole term thing? There's some discussion on if this passes, when it would take effect. There's some discrepancy on the definition of a term. There's some who say that a term is basically the same time limit as the person making the appointment, which is 4 years versus effective 2021. There's been a lot of talk about the pay frequency, which to me is not the conversation. It has nothing to do with the frequency of payment, has nothing to do with the term of the person appointed to the role. So can you speak to, if everything passes and the voters say yes and the council affirms it, would that take place 2021 or would it take place 2022?
My opinion is the language in the proposed amendment would allow council effective January 1st, 2021 to establish the rates of pay for the law director and or the finance director by way of ordinance. And that would become effective, I would say immediately, or otherwise dictated by their ordinance if it were to be a period of time in the future. But it is conceivable that it would be effective immediately.
Okay, Councilwoman Turner had a question, and then Councilman Ray, I see you, but Councilwoman Turner was up.
That was actually my question for you, to define term. It's just in plain language, just define term in relation to the charter.
Yes, well, I think that as it relates to the law director and the finance director, it's hard to say that they actually have a term because they're not elected for any period of time. So I think that the purpose, especially, understand my opinion was drafted in consideration of looking at all of the prior language in the prior charters that were amended. And by choosing what they chose to change and not change, it clearly appears that the intended changes were to do two things, which was establish the Board of Control salaries at 80% of the mayors, and to change the way that those members of the Board of Control were paid. And those were under two separate ordinances. However, to define a term of either the law director or the finance director, certainly also because it was not changed or further defined, I think is difficult to do other than to say it's for a pay period of 2 weeks now, as opposed to a prior pay period of 30 days, because I think it's safe to say that both of those employees or both of those individuals aren't elected for any period of time. They serve at the discretion of the mayor. And specifically, when it came to changing the language, when it talked about the mayor's salary being established prior to that mayor's term, the prior amendment specifically left out making that reference to the law director and or the finance director. So reading everything in its totality and trying to take into account what the prior council's charter amendments were, I can only say that a court would likely interpret term to be a current pay period. I know that's a very complicated answer, but it's also a lot of conflicting language that can be interpreted only that way, in my opinion.
Well, thank you for that. I see Councilman Ray. I just want to say that although they're not elected, they serve at the pleasure of the mayor who has a term. And when that mayor's term is up, in this case, we have unlimited terms. But if there's a new administration that comes in, those previous appointees cannot just serve under a new administration because they have to be reaffirmed or reappointed every 4 years. So I think it's safe to assume that the term would go along with the person who is the appointing authority during that appointing authority's term. And so and again, I'm not the lawyer. I'm trying to, whatever, but pay period and term means term. Pay period means pay period. There's no such thing as a pay term. And so I think we're kind of twisting this thing, but I'm not a voting member. So I'll just defer. Councilman Ray, you have the floor.
Attorney Vivo, I think maybe one clarification would be, as you're referring to the term as the pay period. So if you are the law director or the finance director and you worked 1 day in that pay period, the way their salary is set, they're paid for that whole pay period. They worked on a Monday and the mayor relieved them on a Tuesday, they would be paid for that term because that's how their services are rendered. Is that correct?
They'd be paid for that pay period, week ending.
Well, I mean, it's a I mean, this isn't obviously part of the opinion or the issue I examined, but I mean, a salary is a salary. So and the salary is for a period of time, usually in these cases, the way that it's written is annually. So I guess what I think the language really addresses or addresses the avoidance of is retroactive changes, meaning that somebody would work a period of time or half a year and then somebody be entitled to anything retroactive. I think the amendments that were prior made in 2003 are only to be dealt with prospective changes in salaries. So yes, I mean, I guess the simple answer to your question is that if they worked a day, they would still be paid their salary.
All right, Councilman Oliver. Oh, Mike, did you have a follow-up?
No, just thank you for that.
Okay,
No, you're welcome.
Oliver.
Yeah, thank you through Chair. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to know if the law director is under the same interpretation.
Mr. Vivo, is our law director, would he agree with your opinion? Is that what you're asking, Councilman Oliver?
Yes.
I certainly can't speak for him other than to say that I know it was reviewed and there were no changes other than grammatical changes made to my rationale.
Through the chair.
Council,
Attorney Limbian here.
Limbian, go ahead, you have the floor.
I agree wholeheartedly with Attorney Vivo's interpretation of those two competing components.
There you go, Councilman Oliver. Any other remarks? Roll call on the passage.
Adam Zach,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Hughes, you're muted.
Councilman Hughes,
I said I would work.
Councilman Hughes,
No.
thank you. McNally,
Yes.
Oliver,
Yes.
Ray,
Yes.
and Turner.
No.
5 yeas, 2 nays.
Ordinance number 18 has been passed. Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our agenda. I just want to say again, our regular council meetings will resume on Wednesday, September 16th. We will put notices out to the public as to the format, whether we'll continue this format or not. But mark your calendars for Wednesday, September 16th for regularly scheduled council meetings. Are there any other final remarks or comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President?
Councilman Davis?
Yes, I just wanted to remind our listening public to please stay safe, wear your mask, and maintain social distancing. Thank you.
Councilman Oliver?
Yes, I just want to make a quick plea to the citizens of Youngstown. I know everybody is searching for transparency in government, and you would really like to know what's going on from the administration level to city council to your county figures, state figures, congressmen. What I would plead and ask for you to do is please get more involved with your city, local, and state government, because this is really just coming from my heart to y'all. If you give these elected officials the impression that they're doing a good job by never speaking up when you don't see what you need done happen, then they're going to continue to not represent you and continue to do what they want rather than what you want. So what I would ask you to do is, first of all, you got to educate yourself and understand that everybody in the city who's on payroll works for you. Every single one of us works for you, the citizen. The department heads work for the mayor. The mayor works for you. So when we get complaints or we get phone calls that come into our office and you guys are wondering why grass isn't getting cut, why potholes aren't being filled, please understand we have to take those things to the department heads or to the mayor. It is according to the mayor's priority that things get done. The only people that work for us as city council is our clerks, and they do a great job of informing us of your phone calls and what you need, what needs to happen, and emailing those, forward those emails to us and to whatever department head needs to take action on your situation. But please get more involved with your city government. If you're not satisfied, please speak up. Bombard phone departments and the mayor's office with calls and let them know what you need done, because you need to set the priority. And at this point, you should know what the priority and the vision of the city is. So please just get involved. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. Meeting is adjourned at 5:08 p.m. Thank you all for attending this meeting of Youngstown City Council.